Welcome to the weekly discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. This is the Fill in the Blank podcast, and I'm Ross Strader, joined by my co-host Keith Abels. And you can follow us on Twitter at AskFITB or email us fitbpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to know that you're listening and what you think about the Fill in the Blank podcast. Well, Keith, it's been a week, and it's that time again. How you doing this week?
I am good. I am so looking forward to episode 23. We have so much to discuss.
I know it's a big week in the world of technology, and we have quite a full show. But before we get there, we do have some follow-up. We talked last week, Keith, about the heart study that you got an email, you got invited into that, you signed up, you began that process. And one of the things we talked about is I said, I didn't get an email. How could you get involved with that if you wanted to? And you found the answer to that.
I did. So I thought it was because I was alphabetically superior. That may still be the case, but let me give you some specifics from Apple. So I went and found the criteria that it takes to get into the Apple Heart Study. Okay. So it turns out you don't just have to have a last name that starts with A. I was a little disappointed. So it turns out other people with other last names can join the study by downloading the app. So there's a Heart Study app, and it says the study is open to any U.S. resident who is 22 years or older, uses an iPhone 5S or later with iOS 11, and an Apple Watch Series 1 or later with watchOS 4. And then and meets other study eligibility criteria, which they don't explain. But hardware-wise, you need a 5S or later, iOS 11, Apple Watch Series 1, running watchOS 4 or later, and you have to be 22. I'm guessing they know that from just the information when you set up your phone, when you put in your date of birth. I guess, do you put in your date of birth? I know you'd put it into the Health app if you use the Health app. So I guess if people haven't put that information into their phone, or they're using phones, or they're not updated to the latest version of iOS, I would think most people are probably on a 5S or later. I would think most people are on iOS 11 or later. The watch is kind of the one that I'm not really sure, how many people have this version of the watch versus that version of the watch and all that sort of stuff. And of course, then they've got this kind of catch-all meets other study eligibility criteria phrase that who knows what that means.
Right.
It may be a mixture of male, female. It may be age. It may be, based on the info. Well, it can't be based on the information you put into the Health app because that's not supposed to be shared anywhere.
No, but you know what? You have an Apple ID. I mean, your Apple ID, you have to give your age when you sign up with an Apple ID.
Okay. All right. So anyway, for those of you that are listening, if you did not receive the email and you meet those criteria and you think you may meet the other eligibility criteria, whatever those may be, then I guess go try to download the Heart Study app and see if it allows you to do it.
And I'm thinking, so Apple Watch Series 1, doesn't that mean the original? I mean, the very first one?
No, the original one, the original doesn't have a series name associated with it.
Oh,
so they released the Series 1 later. And then they also had the Series 3, and then you've got the connected versus the non-connected. Remember, that's the red dot Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Series 3. So the Series 1, I think, is the one that just came out last year at the same... Oh, wait, no. Maybe the Series 1 is the one that came out the year before last that they kept around at the lower price.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's probably
I'm not sure. It's not the original because I did have the original Apple Watch, which is different hardware-wise than the Series 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing the Series 1 and later has some sort of hardware in it that they're using, or maybe the sensors are better, who knows, that help them, I guess, with this specific heart study.
Yeah, okay.
So just buy a new watch.
Yeah, well, I will. I'm just joyfully satisfied that is not based upon alphabetic superiority. And I know that's a big deal for you. I mean, I know
really
kind of your identity's built around that.
It really is. My entire life, every day, first day of school, everything.
Graduation. I mean,
everything. Yeah, I don't have to sit through everybody else. I had, I think, 400 something people in my high school graduating class. And man, I was asleep after 5 minutes, right? Give me my thing and I'm out. See ya.
I was going to say, I didn't know if you left. Maybe you just left.
Man.
Just walked right off the stage and walked out.
I feel bad for those suckers that have kids with like R's and S's. Oh, wait, you're an S.
I know. My son's graduating. We're telling everybody, yeah, you just show up 2 hours late. You'll be fine.
Maybe we should move on. Thanks for listening to the Fill in the Blank podcast. To support our show, go to patreon.com/FITB. Patreon allows you to support our show on your terms. You can contribute any amount that you want, so you get to decide how much our show is worth to you. A challenge for our listeners is to support us by contributing just $1 per month. That's only 3 cents per day. Your support helps us grow our audience and upgrade our audio equipment. Thanks for listening to the show and supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/FITB. patreon.com/FITB.
All right. So, like we said, it was a big week in the technology world. And one of those things was Google's I/O 2018 big kind of tech conference. So there was a keynote, and there's a lot of roundups out there on the internet of what Google covered, what it is that they announced. But Keith, I think it's easily, well, you could easily say, let me say it that way, you could easily say this is probably Google's biggest step forward all at one time. Wouldn't you say that?
It's a pretty big one. There's inside of the announcements from this year, and we'll go through them in just a moment, there are some, I think, just obvious things that they announced that you go, wow, okay, that's impressive. And there's some things that might be less obvious just as you read through them the first time, but as you dig through some of these announcements, I think it really shows you what Google's been working on and how that is just continuing to develop. And so none of these are like really surprising if you've ever really paid attention to what Google does, but the technical feat of some of these things is just pretty darn impressive. So let's run through the top 10, and we're going to run through the top 10 biggest announcements from Google I/O as described by The Verge. I think we both agree we like The Verge, right?
Yeah. We like The Verge. And as you go through these, realize every one of these, in one way or the other, has artificial intelligence underneath it. And so Google is, I think, saying or making a statement, artificial intelligence is what they have fully invested in for the future. So
you're absolutely right. That's a good point.
With that said, The Verge gave us sort of the top 10. So walk us through, Keith, the top 10, and then we'll come back and provide a little color after you've walked through the 10.
Got it. Okay, so the first is Android P, and that is the letter P. And if you did not know, each year Android gets a new version, just like iOS gets a new version. And until they announce the name of it, and the Android names are usually named after desserts. So we're currently on Android O, or Oreo. But before they release whatever the name of it's going to be, they just call it by its first initial. And it's unfortunate because we're at Android P. So yes, we are waiting for the Android P release.
What are they going to do when they run out of the alphabet?
I don't know. I'm sure they'll figure out something very googly.
Like hurricanes. All right.
Oh, goodness, yeah. Okay, so Android P has some iPhone 10-like gestures. It's got some features in there that help you spend less time on your device, which is pretty interesting, and a bunch of other things in there. So Android P, they gave us an update on that.
Okay.
There's also, the second thing is new Google Assistant voices. There are 6 new voices, and the amazing thing about these is just how natural they sound. So during the keynote, they ran through just briefly each of these 6 new voices, and they are getting very lifelike. I don't know if that's something we should be excited about or something we're scared about, but we will see.
And there's like the John Legend voice, right? I mean,
coming soon, the John Legend voice. They are setting up. So they brought John Legend in, yes, and he recorded some stuff, and then they took that and made it into a voice that will be coming to the Google Assistant later this year. So in the very near future, you can have John Legend be your Google Assistant.
I'm just going on the record. I'm not having John Legend.
What if he sang some of the responses? The guy's got an awesome voice.
Well, you're right about that. You're right, yeah.
Okay. So, well, speaking of, I'm not sure how I feel about that, Google Duplex. This is the one that's getting all the press after the keynote. This is a version of the Google Assistant that will actually call and do some basic tasks for you, and it sounds exactly like another person. There are examples we will link to where you can go hear these, and they did the thing where the Google Assistant called a hair salon and booked an appointment, and you could not tell. They were talking to a real person on the other end. That other person clearly did not know they were talking to some AI or robotic voice. You could not tell at all, at least I could not, that there was some sort of AI or robotic's not really the right word, but as a descriptive word, it's probably the best one. There wasn't a robotic voice on the other end of the line. It's pretty amazing. So we're definitely going to deep dive into that. So that was the third one. Google
and
Duplex.
By the way, we're going to put a link, and I think I've figured out how I'll even drop a little snippet of it here as we talk about it later.
Okay. Then we've got smart displays with Google Assistant coming this summer. This is a product or a series of products that is going straight at the Amazon Echo Show. And remember, the Echo Show is the one with the screen on it that Amazon released last year.
Right.
So Google is partnering with different hardware manufacturers to create smart displays with Google Assistant. So think of the Google Home with a screen on it and all of the different things that Google can do. This is a pretty interesting one. We're going to deep dive into this as well. So smart displays with Google Assistant coming this summer. The next on the list here, Gmail can now draft emails for you almost by itself. So they walk through a scenario here where as you start typing, this reminds me, Ross, of the autofill when you're doing a Google search, which is terrifying. When you start typing things and you see what other people search for when they type in those words, it makes you feel really sad for humanity when you see those. Now, so that same thing is going to be applied to your email. That will be coming out over the next few months. So Gmail will just start drafting your emails for you. Just so as you start typing, it will then just make recommendations of how to finish each sentence. So you can see how Google, since they have all of your email anyway, can kind of pick up on how you communicate and to different people, and it will just start filling those in. So I'm curious to see how this works. I don't know if I'll actually use it, but that will be coming out over the next few weeks for all Gmail users.
Okay.
Next up, Google Maps is getting way more social and going after Yelp. I like this a lot. So already inside Google Maps, you can get ratings for businesses, and you can see, how are they open? Are they not open? Have you ever put in a destination in Google Maps and it will tell you this location will be closed by the time you get there?
Oh,
have you ever noticed that?
Absolutely, yes.
So that's a pretty cool feature. So they're going even further into giving more information with the things inside of Google Maps. So what it says in here, it says, a new For You tab lets you follow specific neighborhoods to see restaurants and businesses that are trending among other users. You can even coordinate with friends in real time to make a short list when choosing a place to eat. So you've got really you've got access to ratings as you're searching. Let's just take a restaurant. You can see how other people have rated that. You can see, you can already see some of this stuff, like how expensive it is. It has a little dollar sign, either $1, $2, or $3 signs from least expensive to most expensive, so you can get an idea of what restaurants cost.
Yeah.
You can see just all kinds of stuff. So they're getting those kinds of just more Yelp-like features built into Google Maps. I think that's a really good idea. And they're also adding augmented reality directions to Google Maps, which is a very big deal. So we will come back and talk about this a little bit, but AR, or augmented reality, turn-by-turn directions inside Google Maps.
That's awesome.
Next up, Google Photos gets even smarter editing powers. We talked about Google Photos in the last couple of weeks or so. And so Google Photos is gaining new features like the ability to separate subjects from the background. So an example they gave was taking a photo of a child, and they turned the background black and white, and they kept the child in color so that child really stands out, which is really cool. I think the standout feature from the Keynote was taking an old black and white photo and adding color to it. So they will take these older photos, which I have a ton of from my grandparents and great-grandparents. I'm sure you do as well, Ross. And so you can take these photos and now colorize them. And so they did an example of one on stage, and it was really awesome. I think this got a lot of applause from the crowd that was there, because this is something I think we can all relate to.
It's like AI Photoshop.
Exactly. How they know which colors to put in there, I don't know, but we'll see. And then moving on, a couple more here. I know it seems like there's a million of them, but yeah, there's only 10. I am on number 9 right now, I think. So number 9 here, Google News is now curated by AI. You mentioned AI is running through kind of the common thread that runs through all of these announcements, and it certainly applies to Google News. That means that it is being overhauled and now powered largely by AI. So it's using artificial intelligence to analyze all the content published to the web at any moment and organize all of those articles, videos, and more into storylines. So this kind of breaks the news up into a couple of sections for you, and we're going to get into this in just a few minutes. I think this is a big one as well, and no doubt a shot straight at Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
The final one, Google Lens. Google Lens is not something we've talked a lot about, but it's a very cool app built into certain Android phones. This will allow you to copy text from anywhere in the real world using the camera on your phone and then pasting that into a field on your smartphone. The example they give you is you'd be able to point your phone's camera at text in the real world, let's say a written down Wi-Fi password, and then your phone will capture that text and then paste it into that field on your smartphone. So it just enters it in. I think that's a pretty cool thing. And then you can use Google Lens for shopping and things like that. So those are the top 10 biggest announcements from Google I/O.
I know, it's crazy. And the first thing, one of the first things you said after we walked through the list initially, just before the show, you remember what you said? You said, you know what? It makes me want to get an Android phone.
It kind of does.
It's pretty cool. There hasn't been that much coolness dropped all at once by anybody in a long time. I will say that. This is a fantastic list from Google. And so, all right, Keith, so those were 10 of them. Real quickly, the voice assistant, the Google Duplex, the smart displays, Gmail drafting your emails, Google Maps getting more social, Google Maps adding augmented reality, Google Photos getting even smarter, Google News being totally overhauled by AI, and then the Google Lens, and it can copy text from the real world and do some other cool stuff. Which of those, Keith, stands out to you the most? You think, man, okay, I love that, or I'm so intrigued by that. Which of those 10 stand out for you?
Okay, so I think the biggest news story and probably the most talked about feature or release as part of Google I/O is Google Duplex.
Oh,
by far.
Yes.
For many reasons. And so I kind of separate this into two things. Number one, is it just a pure technical feat? It is damn impressive what they've done. And again, we'll link to the Google AI blog that has all these examples, and it's a really fascinating read that explains kind of the logic that they use to build Google Duplex. And so you'll learn a lot by reading that.
Yeah, so here, I'm just going to give a little snippet.
Sure,
so
yeah, go.
Here's what it says. While sounding natural, this is from Google's blog, actually, Google's AI blog. While sounding natural, these and other examples are conversations between a fully automatic computer system and real businesses.
See, how may I help you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people? When?
Next Wednesday at 6 p.m.
Oh, actually, we reserve for upper 5 people. For 4 people, you can come.
How long is the wait usually to be seated?
For when, tomorrow or weekday or?
For next Wednesday, the 7th.
Oh no, it's not too busy. You can come for 4 people, okay?
Oh, I gotcha. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.
All right, Keith. My first comment about that is it's hard to tell which one I'm supposed to be listening for as the Google AI voice.
Right.
That's fascinating. Fascinating.
This blows my mind.
Fully responsive. It's answering unpredictable or predictable to some degree, but the computer has no idea what the response is going to be. Not no idea. Obviously, it has some idea. It's programmed for that. But it's carrying on a real-time conversation with somebody on the other end of the line so let me say it this way. The person on the other end of the line is speaking English likely as their second language. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, clearly in this example. And they called that kind of restaurant in this example for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Right? Because it has to understand people that are speaking with all kinds of accents. Because they can't just make this for people that speak perfect English, right? You just can't.
No.
This is both fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Fascinating just because they can make this work. And they don't have just one or two examples. They have a lot. So if you go to the Google AI blog that we link to, you can go through quite a few examples. And if you haven't heard these yet, it will just blow your mind. So I don't think it's hard for anybody to understand why this is such a big deal, just from the standpoint of just a technical feat, right? This is taking what Google does just to the next natural step.
Yeah.
And so we've been talking about virtual assistants, and they're really not that smart. And right now we use them for very basic tasks like look this thing up on the internet, or, turn on my lights, or, that kind of stuff, right? This takes that to really that next step where when you say my virtual assistant, this is what a virtual assistant does, right? It gets things done for you. It doesn't just go kind of fetch commands.
No, it's negotiating a dinner reservation. It's not just making a dinner reservation, negotiating a dinner reservation.
Right.
That's fascinating to me.
So if you look at so what we've learned in the last few years is, whenever something like this kind of technology is released, you immediately kind of look at the cool thing, but the cool side of it. But then you look at the thing, oh my God, how can this be weaponized? How can people that want to use this for no good, how can they make that happen?
Telemarketing,
just spam.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Just put every telemarketer in the nation out of business.
Or you know what? If you wanted to put a restaurant out of business.
Oh, absolutely.
This is basically like, you've probably heard of a DDoS attack on a website where they just overwhelm it with traffic. You could basically do a Google bot DDoS to a restaurant and just book all the reservations and have nobody show up.
Or campaign calls.
Or whatever.
Or calls to your politician.
This works both ways, though. So I can make one that says, hey, this is so-and-so. I'd appreciate if you vote for me. You could also say, this is another politician, and have this person say all kinds of stuff, that isn't true, or it's offensive, or whatever.
Yeah, we're going to get to where we never answer our phones.
Well, so that's okay. That's a very good point. Let me back away. Let me take off my tinfoil hat real quick and address that. So their explanation for this feature being introduced, and to be clear, this is not live yet, right? And they've not been. They did not give a timeline. They didn't mention who would have access to this or anything like that. But so the purpose of this was to handle some basic tasks for people when an online reservation system is not available. So the examples they gave during the keynote were scheduling a hair salon appointment, making a reservation at a restaurant, which are very similar things, right? So I am calling a place instead of booking it online because they presumably don't have an online reservation of any kind. So I'm going to call a place and try to reserve a service of some sort, whether it's a haircut or dinner, for this many people. It's either one or many at this particular time on this date. So that actually is a fairly narrow set of commands, whether you're reserving a table at a restaurant or whether you're trying to book a hair salon appointment, right? Those are kind of the same thing.
Right.
So the use case that they have here is very narrow, and that's on purpose. So what they call this a closed domain, which is it's a topic or something that's narrow enough for them to explore extensively. And so they're training this, I don't even know what to call it, this machine, they're training their system to execute at a high level at a very specific, narrowly defined task. And so their case was, we want to do this where an online reservation is not available. So you think, well, if you're going to book a table at a restaurant, why wouldn't you just, either go straight to their site or go to their app if they have one, or use something like OpenTable or whatever.
Or Google Maps.
Or Google Maps even. You could see this being built into Google Maps. So I don't know when's the last time you had to book a reservation at a restaurant?
I did a week ago. Had some folks in town and had to call and make a reservation. So, but not very often, though. I mean, we don't live in a place where you have to have a lot of reservations. The larger cities, absolutely. People call and make reservations all the time. You
do, but do you? So when I was in San Francisco a few years ago, we just open-tabled everything.
Well, that's true.
So
Yeah,
I wonder
that's right.
if they're using this as just a way to kind of show off the technology, but I don't know how often you would actually use this. I mean, if you do, that's great. My concern on this is, what we've already talked about is how can this be used in ways that Google did not intend? And is it fair? Is it the right thing for the person on the other end of the line? So the person answering the phone, is it fair for them to have a conversation with a robot? Again, I'm using robot just as a generic term here. Is it fair for them to have a conversation with an AI without their knowledge? Should Google disclose that? Now, they didn't address this during the keynote, but there was so much press after the fact. Obviously, right? You're going to have a ton of people reporting on this, and there were a lot of questions raised, like, are you going to identify yourself as a bot of any kind? And so Google has come out now and said, yes, it will identify itself as, and they'll, whatever they phrase it as. So that, it could say, if you're calling a restaurant, it could say, this is so-and-so from Google calling on behalf of Ross Stringer, or something like that. So it would identify itself. But they never even addressed any of this stuff on stage, which is kind of a concern for me. Like, they never said at any point, we're only going to release this way, or we've got some built-in controls so that this can't be abused, or they didn't even address any of that. So if this were Apple releasing a feature like this, I feel like they would spend at least half the time talking about how they've protected it from it being malicious.
Right.
Google didn't spend half a second on it. They just, they talked about it. They did the demos and the crowd oohed and awed, and all that's great. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The fact that they didn't take even just a minute and say, now we've thought about how this can be used in ways that we did not intend. So here's what we're going to do to kind of proactively make sure that doesn't happen. Not once did they mention that. That bothers me a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and here's the other thing. So this is technology to negotiate some reservations or, do all that stuff. But here's the code they've cracked. They've cracked natural sounding speech from a computer, from AI. So drop that in a robot. And now, people will end up having conversations with computers, back and forth dialogues. The possibilities are endless. Now, what the applications end up being, again, it's like we've talked about several times. We've got to have our eyes wide open at the front end of these advancements and not get into 5 years from now as it's, being applied in all different kinds of settings, and now we've got to clean it up,
Right. Oh, yeah. So, well, let me ask you this. Okay, so this is Google saying we are creating this to kind of handle these mundane tasks in your life. Okay, fine. Right. It sounds to me like, because can't Google just make a business version of this and go sell it to a restaurant and say, oh, let us just make you a digital assistant to answer your phone and do the same thing on the other end?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you're having two computers talk to each other in human voices, which is absurd.
Right.
They don't need to.
No, they don't. And no, of course. And so, which tells you, this isn't about making reservations. This is the first step.
No. Yeah. This is the dipping the toe in the water. Yeah.
To some gigantic AI advancements, and Google beat everybody to the punch, getting to show it off. But listen, everybody's working on this. This is where the future is going. The future is going to AI. These are the biggest investments that these tech companies are making, is in artificial intelligence. And man, Google cracked the natural conversation code before anybody else. But everybody will have this technology before the end of the year, Keith. Before the end of the year, everybody will be employing it.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my guess. So we're Apple fanboys, okay? Your first response was, man, I'm going to need an Android.
Well, that's true.
And you're not the only one. This makes that very much, it makes that more desirable from just if you're into tech and that's what, you're buying hardware and using software because you enjoy not just the utility of it, but also the aesthetic of it. And there's a lot of people like that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, we'll see. We'll see what this actually looks like. I mean, Google's kind of notorious for announcing things that never ship. I mean, obviously something like this will ship, but we don't know kind of what they're ultimately going to do with this, or if it will be released in its current form to make restaurant reservations and all that kind of stuff anyway.
Well, and to put it in perspective, so as we talk about, Google I/O, and it may be that lots of our listeners use, iPhones and all of those things. But when you look around the world, Android, I mean, everybody uses Android. I mean, 2 billion Android users on this planet. They're by far, in a way, the most popular operating system on the planet. And that's what Google's building for, is Android.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, global, when you look at just the global numbers for mobile OSs, I mean, Android's 80+% of the market. And that's because, you can buy so many different types of Android phones at all different price points. And most of the rest of the world is not able to, I mean, you can't expect, a lot of people around the world to spend $800 to $1,000 on a smartphone. They're getting, $30 to $50 Android phones.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and that's an advantage that Google has. I mean, they have a market share advantage there worldwide. So, I mean, the U.S. may be more iPhone heavy than any other country. I mean, certainly Western countries are going to be, have more iPhone users than anywhere else. But when you look at just the overall smartphone user base, then it is all Android, no doubt.
Well, here's a commitment we are making on the Fill in the Blank podcast, is that we are not going to transition into an artificial intelligence podcast. It will be live, human, real voices for the duration of this show. Commitment we're making, right, Keith? You're looking to replace me, aren't you?
Well, I mean, I got a lot going on during the week. If I could just teach it, how to sound like me and use sarcasm in just the right places, then, maybe I can multitask a little.
Can you imagine how easy that would be to edit?
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, my gosh. They wouldn't fumble over their words, make mistakes. So, all right. Well, so that's the Google Duplex. Certainly, yeah, that's the one everybody's talking about. It's fascinating. All right. Well, so besides Google Duplex, which I think for you and I both, that was one that stood out and thought, man, that'd be a lot of fun to play with. Can't wait to see it in real life, and certainly feel somewhat cautious about how it will be utilized. But nonetheless, we love cool tech, and that is absolutely some of the coolest tech we've seen in a long time. All right. What else stands out to you about Google's I/O conference?
Okay, I think I'm going to surprise you a little bit with this next one.
Okay.
I am excited about the smart displays with Google Assistant.
Yeah.
And so when you look at this, you're like, really? That's exciting?
Yeah.
But it is. Okay, so you have to keep in mind that, as you know, I am a faithful Amazon lady user, right? I'm not allowed to say lady in the can anymore. And so I think we're going to just say Amazon lady. Did we decide that was what we were going to say? I don't know.
Amazon lady.
So I've got Amazon ladies all over my house, but that doesn't sound right either now that I say it like that out loud. So we have multiple puck-like or cylindrical Amazon devices scattered around the house that we use frequently.
Yes.
And so, I am just a fan of using those for all kinds of various things. And I don't have the Google Homes, which are Google's versions of those. I don't have the Google Homes, not because they're not good or not because I don't like them, but it's because I just already had a couple of the Amazon Echoes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, once you have a few, it's like it doesn't make sense to get another one, right? These things work great. I don't have any problems with it.
Right.
But one thing I didn't do when Amazon released their Echo Show, which is the one that has the screen on it. They released this at some point last year. I was interested in it. It has a camera, and it allows you to video chat. It's using, I think, Amazon's proprietary video chat thing. So I don't know how many people would actually use that. I probably wouldn't use that. But having the screen on there is nice to where, you can watch YouTube videos or it displays the weather forecast or whatever. I kind of like that. Now, so Google announced at I/O these smart displays with the Google Assistant that are coming soon. But they're going to do things a little differently. Instead of having just one device or just only something that they build, they are partnering with other companies. So they've got JBL and they've got LG, they've got Lenovo, and I'm sure there'll be some other hardware partners that they have here that have these screens basically, and they're all different shapes and sizes, and they have speakers and that kind of stuff. So it's a small screen that has the Google Assistant built into it, and it takes advantage of a lot of other Google things. So for example, just when it's in its kind of resting state, when it's just sitting there idle, then it uses your Google Photos as a screensaver. And I like that because in our kitchen right now, my wife has a digital photo frame that, flips through all these pictures of our friends and families and, things like that. Those are really popular. Lots of people have those. So, okay, well, I already kind of have that, but, this is built into this one thing. I also have an Amazon Echo in the kitchen. And the kitchen is like the most obvious place for one of these assistants, I think, right? Yeah. It's just kind of the heart of the house. It's where a lot of your family activity happens. It's where you listen to music. It's where you ask about the weather. That's just kind of where everybody congregates. And it doesn't matter where you live. It's just like the kitchen's the heart of the house. And so it makes sense to have one there. And so those, I already have the digital frame. I already have an Amazon Echo. This kind of builds those all into one. And the examples they gave were fairly relevant. Mm-hmm. So, you can just pull up a YouTube video and watch it. I find that my kids are watching more and more YouTube videos from time to time. You can use video chat from there, which is going to be, I guess, I don't know if it's using Google Duo or Google Hangouts or what they're using for their video chat. I need to figure that out. But I'll tell you, it's probably got more users than the Amazon Echo Show has.
Absolutely. As far as that
goes. When you ask, they do a recipe thing. So if you ask for a recipe, then it shows you, and then it just says you can say start cooking, and it will walk you step by step through the recipe. I just like what this does. And I wouldn't imagine like having one of these in every room in my house. Like I have the small little Amazon Echoes kind of staged throughout the house. I have the really inexpensive ones in most of the rooms, and only have a couple of the more expensive, taller ones. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't put one of these smart displays with a Google Assistant in every room, but I could see one in the kitchen, and I could see one maybe in my office. I don't know. We'll see. But I use the Google Assistant all the time on my iPhone just because I like it better than Siri. Mm-hmm. So this could be the thing that maybe kind of unseeds my Amazon Echo use in a couple of rooms in the house, or at least for the time being, puts them both in the same room, and I'll just let I'll just let kind of nature take its course and see what happens, right? See which one you kind of end up using,
right? And
then repurpose the others or something like that. So I don't know that a lot of people were super excited about this, but I, for one, am. I like what they're doing with the smart displays. Does this have any interest to you at all?
No, not at all. But I will tell you what I do like about it. Okay, so no, I have no interest in getting one of these at all. I like my kitchen quiet, so no, I'm not interested in that. But what I do like about it is I like what it does to Amazon. I like that that there's an answer to the Amazon Echo. So I'm fine with the Amazon Echo. We have one. We don't hardly ever use it. But Amazon's design is they want to be in your kitchen so that you'll be ordering from their stores. I mean, they want to eliminate as much friction as possible so that you'll buy something from Amazon. And I'm not getting the sense, of course, Google, you buy something off a Google product, I'm sure. But Google's really just delivering news and services and information, and it doesn't seem like there's the ulterior motive of, and we want you to shop from the Amazon store from your Alexa. Does that make sense? So I just like it that there's some competition. I just like it that somebody else is in that space so that we don't let Amazon have the keys to all the cars.
That's a really good point. And as you were saying that, I thought, I thought of this question. So here's my question.
Okay.
Who do you trust more with your data, Amazon or Google?
Google.
Okay. So you didn't even hesitate.
No.
I'm the same way. I'm not really scared of Amazon having some of the data they have on me 5 minutes before we started recording the show, I ordered something for my son. He came in and reminded me that, hey, we were going to order this thing. So we hopped on Amazon and we ordered it. I'm not really concerned about the stuff they know. But for some reason, I don't feel like Amazon's as good of a steward of my data or with my data that Google is. I don't really have a whole lot to base that on other than just kind of my own anecdotal, feedback and experience over the years.
Well, I know. And, so think about it this way. If Amazon launched an email service that rivaled Google's, and so they had a great, email experience, you could have a, Keith Abels at Amazon.com, I wouldn't do it. I don't think I want Amazon being anywhere near all the things that are in my emails and I receive from emails. And not that, anybody can read my emails. I don't want to be micro advertised to based upon my emails. And I know that that's happening with Google. I'm sure it is. But for some reason, there's still a level of trust. Google hasn't broken trust with me. I would say that way.
Okay. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not going to buy a smart display with Google Assistant?
I'm not, but
looks like I'm going to have to take one for the team and pick one up at some point.
Yeah, well, you just tell your wife that, look, I have forced you into this since I won't participate. So.
Well, we still have the fill in the blank $1 challenge out there. So if you all want to hear some in-depth reviews of these products, then feel free to support us on the fill in the blank $1 challenge at patreon.com/FITB.
Yes, good. All right. Well, so I'm going to tell you what I think is the most underwhelming of all these. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even more underwhelming to me than the smart display, which I can see the advantage of the
that's
smart
harsh.
display. I know. It's the Gmail can draft your email for you.
Yeah.
I don't know. First of all, the whole autofill thing kind of drives me crazy. I took typing in high school, so I can at least type 20, 30 words a minute, and I'm just not interested in having that autofilled. And I just don't even want it on the screen. It's such a distraction to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what their motivation for doing this is, other than, it's basically testing their AI to see if it's predicting properly. Because, people are either going to use their suggestions or they're not.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm looking at the example they give, and it says, hey, Jacqueline, haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well. And so as they start typing in the sentence, haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well. As the computer, as it starts typing, this user that you can't see, starts typing, HA for haven't seen you in a while. It just starts, kind of filling these in. And I hope you're doing well. I'm really curious what it's going to do when I start typing this, because hope you're doing well is not something I would say to somebody. It's just not.
Right. Okay.
So I don't know if it knows, like, that in this example, this person would say that. It's just not something. It doesn't mean that I hope you're not well. But the fact that I wouldn't say that, it's just not something I would say. I just don't think to say that in an introduction in an email.
Well,
the other thing I thought.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the other thing I thought is in the example it says, "Haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well. Let's get together soon for tacos. If you bring the chips and salsa, I'll make the guacamole." And as you were talking about Amazon having your email, I thought, let's get together for tacos, and and you can order all the ingredients here or whatever. Right? I could just see Amazon just going, "I'll go ahead and order those and send them to your house immediately."
Right.
Especially now that they own a grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I got off on a tangent. Go ahead.
No, it would be interesting to see. So I am fascinated by the AI behind it. And does it account for, hey, this is a business associate. So somebody that shares the same business email address as you do, does it take a more professional tone than if you were emailing your sister or your wife or your child? And that would be interesting to me to just see how flexible it is. And how well it knows you. How well it knows, your more professional correspondence versus your more casual correspondence. I think that would be fascinating to test out.
I bet they have something in mind for that, because in the article here it says Smart Compose is coming to the new Gmail for consumers first over the next few weeks, and then G Suite users will have to wait a few months. G Suite, which is a terrible name by the way, is if you use Google or Gmail for your business address, so if you map your own domain to your email address, so if you're Ross at company.com.
Mm-hmm.
But Gmail actually powers that for you, and you pay Google, to do all that for you. Then you sign up for G Suite. I forget what they used to call it, but G Suite's just a horrible name.
It is a horrible name.
But anyway, so if you're a G Suite user, then they know that this is, you're using this in a business setting. So I'm guessing that there will be some different parts to a G Suite user than there would be to just a regular consumer. So knowing that this is likely a business email, I would think that they would take that into account as it is just auto-filling the message.
Yeah. So I'm interested in the tech behind it. I'm totally not interested in Gmail writing my emails for me.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to the Google Duplex things. Like, I don't send a ton of email.
Right.
I mean, the most email I send is for work, and that's only because I work for, a gigantic company that still uses too much email.
Yeah.
And that actually would be great if it would type some of those emails for me.
I'm really kind of waiting for the email apocalypse. So we wake up one day and there's just no more email.
You and me both. We've been waiting a long time for that. We'll see.
Wouldn't hurt my feelings. All right. Well, so let me tell you what I think I'm most interested in. Save the Google Duplex. That's fascinating. The thing I think that is very exciting for me is I really, really like the new Google News app that's curated by AI. So you can actually download that now. So I've downloaded it onto my phone, my iPhone. Shows up as an app. So it used to be, so Google had a couple of iterations. There was a Google News Reader,
right,
or Newsroom, and then there was the Google Play News that they had for a little while. But this is just Google News in the App Store. But I will tell you how they aggregate the news, but not just aggregate it, and then deliver the news to you, I think is fascinating. So it takes out a lot of, you don't feel as though they're providing you a certain news from a certain angle. And what I mean by that is, if you download it, you go to the headlines, it's going to give you the headlines that are going to be the above the fold newspaper headlines across the country. But what they've also done is they give you several different perspectives of the same stories. And so if you want to read about what's going on in North Korea, or you want to read about the latest, thing that's happening with the president, or, the volcanoes in Hawaii, whatever that is, you're going to find the links to it. And the way you do it is you look at it, you can scroll up and down for the different news stories, but then on the individual news stories, they've got it curated so you can read NPR, you can read CNN, you can read Wired, you can read The Hill, you can read New York Times, The Washington Post, Fox News. So it's giving you the opportunity to click into all different kinds of news perspectives, if you will. And so there's not any pure right or left news. But you're not feeling like, hey, this is the only story delivered to me from one only source. It gives you multiple sources for the stories that they deem as the headlines. I really like that, Keith.
I really like that they are, I think, taking a pretty good shot at Google here. I'm sorry, at Facebook.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's be honest, Facebook has been a terrible platform for news.
Right.
And it's not that you can't get any news on there. It's just that they don't do a good enough job of either sourcing it, or their AI, their algorithms are not curating it effectively. And there's just so many just crap news stories all over Facebook that they've just not done a good job. We talked last week about Apple buying Texture, the magazine app.
Yeah.
And I think Apple, with their news app and what they're going to be doing with Texture, is probably going down the same road. And I see a lot of the similarities here with the Google News app. And I think that Apple and Google both see an opportunity to recapture some attention that Facebook's been kind of drawing away from everybody else by providing high quality news. And I'll be honest with you, this is something the world really needs right now.
Oh,
we
absolutely.
Really do. And it's not about having articles or news stories that you just 100% agree with. But objective journalism is a very important part of just society. I think that's my personal opinion.
Absolutely. And you have to think that folks that are sort of the newsies among us, the journalists and the news editors and those that sit at the copy desks, and that they have to be rejoicing at technology that is aiming at high quality news. And so, it's not going to completely eliminate fake news, but it also is going to minimize the amount of stories that are just one-off stories by some random blogger, because what Google's doing is they're giving you multiple sources about a topic or about a story. And so you're able right there, if you want to do your own research, read 3 or 4 of these articles, find out, if it is a controversial news topic, there they are. They're all right there for you. And I have to applaud. I think, good for Google for creating an app. Listen, creating those apps, aggregating that news. News comes from everywhere, from all kinds of sources. There are headlines everywhere. That is a incredible puzzle that Google has figured out, how to put all of those things together in an app that's easy to navigate, easy to read. I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah, I agree. I downloaded the app on my phone. Now, I have been using the Apple News app quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to put this right beside it on my home screen, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and see which one I like the best. There are a lot of similarities between those two apps.
Yeah, there are. And I'll tell you what, I used to use on a web browser. I used to go to the Google News page. So Google has a where they have a landing page to do just search the internet or to do images. They also have a Google News page. And I always thought that was fairly well curated as well. You got, again, here's a topic, here are several sources for reading about that topic, and, it gave you a lot of different options. One of the things I noticed about the Google News is in the aggregation, because it knows my location, I allowed for it to know my location, it gave me top news stories of the city that I live in from local news. And Google News and Flipboard do not do that to my knowledge.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I like that. I like it. So Google News, not the sexiest of all of those things, but I think incredibly beneficial.
Agreed.
All right, Keith. Well, so that is there's so much more that we could talk about. We could probably spend several shows on this, but let's wrap it up there, and let's get on with what's your blank check this week.
All right, so my blank check this week is actually something that Apple brought up at, I believe, their last major event. Whether it was it WWDC last year? I can't remember. But this is an app called IKEA Place. And so, yes, it's that IKEA where you buy your awesome assemble-it-yourself furniture that comes with a tiny little Allen wrench that your hands will never be able to use. So IKEA Place takes advantage of the augmented reality feature in your iPhone. So what you do with this is pretty simple. You go to the app, and then you actually go pick out different IKEA furniture, whether it's a chair or a couch or a little end table or whatever, and it uses AR to actually place that piece of furniture in your room. So you just point your camera at wherever it is in your room you want to go, and you select the piece of furniture that you want, and it places it there. And then you can rotate it, you can move it, you can pick it up and move it to a different part of your room, just all from your iPhone. It actually works with your iPad as well. And it's a great way for you to see if a piece of furniture that you're interested in, whether it's a chair, like I said, or a bookcase, or even a little table, makes sense in the room that you're in. And it works remarkably well. So I don't know that I'm going to go buy a bunch of IKEA furniture because of this app, but it's certainly, I love the AR aspect of how it works. The implementation is really good. And I could see this becoming almost, every furniture store needs this, right? If you don't have this and you're trying to sell anything that goes in your house, then that's kind of dumb. I remember seeing recently, I forget which car company it was. It might be Volvo that actually has an AR component to their app to where you can actually see whatever car you're picking out in your driveway. I think that's kind of hokey.
Yes.
But actually seeing a couch in your living room to make sure it's going to fit or to make sure you like it with everything else, I think that's a pretty good use of this technology.
Oh,
So,
I think it's a great use. Hey, think about it this way. You could also, landscaping.
oh, absolutely.
You
That's
got
a
a
great
space
example.
in your yard and you think, man, what do I want to do here? And it's hard for a lot of people to visualize what those things will look like. So you could roll through several options and go, oh, yeah, you know what? I like that. I like the way that looks. And so, yeah,
Oh my goodness!
landscaping.
I just had a major breakthrough.
Oh, right here in the middle of the
Live.
Fill in the Blank live podcast.
Google's AI looking at a part of your yard where you're trying to add some landscaping, and it can detect the conditions. It knows where you are because it's got GPS. It knows which way your house faces because you're looking at it, and it knows which way your phone's facing. So it puts all that together, and it says based on where you are and your climate and all that, here are the things that will grow the best here, and then it will show you a picture of it, and then it will give you a link on where you can click on it and go buy it. Okay, what do you think? Would that be cool?
Oh, that would be awesome. It would take into account the climate you live in. Yeah, everything from humidity to ground soil to all of those things. Absolutely.
You heard it here first. Google Landscaping coming soon.
Yes, or if you're an app developer out there, hey, let's join together with Fill in the Blank podcast. Let's beat Google to the punch and then let them buy it from us.
Yeah, I like that idea too. I'm
Yeah,
fine
I
either
do
way.
too.
Let me know.
Yeah. All right. Well, my blank check, I'm going to totally, this is terrible, but man, I'm calling back to the Google News app that we just talked about a few minutes ago. Google News app, go to your app store, download it. I'd love to know what you think about Google's take on how to aggregate, curate, and deliver the news right there on your phone or your iPad. So I'm going to go back to Google News. That's my blank check of the week.
Well, I'm going to use it quite a bit this week, like I said earlier. So I think that is an excellent pick.
Well, Keith, this was a great show. A lot that we talked about, and there was a lot of fun things. And the great news is this isn't all of the great tech news that came out over the last couple of weeks. I can't wait until episode 24 next week. Thanks for listening to Fill in the Blank, where we discuss how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. We'll be back next week with another episode, and in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at AskFITB or email us at fitbpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think of the show, and if you like the show, tell your friends. And please rate us and review us on iTunes or from wherever it is that you're listening to the podcast. And remember the Fill in the Blank $1 challenge. Your support goes a long way. We'll see you again next week here at Fill in the Blank.